Ever wondered what it felt like to see a berserker charging at you with foam dripping from his mouth? Viking warriors didn't just raid, they perfected the art of terror. From axes that could split skulls to spears carved with runes for luck, these weapons were forged for one purpose: securing victory through blood and iron. And the most brutal one? It's not what you think. The DNX Axe. Forget everything you know about axes. The DNX Axe wasn't for chopping wood, it was for chopping people in half. Standing nearly as tall as a man, this two-handed beast had a blade so wide it could decapitate a horse. One swing could cleave through shield, armor, and the unfortunate soul behind it. Vikings called it the Great Axe, and for good reason. The blade was thin but razor-sharp, designed to bite deep and pull out clean. No getting stuck mid-battle. The long handle gave incredible leverage. Physics turned into pure destruction. A skilled warrior could reach over enemy shields, hook them down, and follow up with a killing blow before his opponent knew what hit him. At the Battle of Stamford Bridge, legend tells of one Viking warrior who held off an entire English army on a bridge, swinging his DNX Axe like a madman until someone finally speared him from below. Whether true or not, the story captures the kind of carnage this weapon could deliver. One man, one axe, one bridge painted red. The psychological impact was just as deadly. Imagine seeing a wall of these things coming at you, wielded by screaming Norsemen who believed dying in battle could earn them a place in Odin's hall. Most enemies broke and ran before the first swing landed. The Seax. Every Viking carried one, from the poorest farmer to the richest jarl. The Seax wasn't just a weapon, it was a way of life. This single-edged blade, anywhere from 6 inches to 2 feet long, was your eating knife, your tool, and your last resort, all rolled into one piece of steel. But don't let everyday nature fool you. In the right hands, a Seax could end a fight faster than any sword. The blade was thick and sturdy, perfect for punching through mail rings or sliding between ribs. Vikings wore them everywhere, at feasts, in bed, even in their graves, because you never knew when you'd need to kill someone. The bigger versions, called broken-back Seax, had a distinctive angled spine that put extra weight behind the cutting edge. One slash across the throat, and your enemy's last words were probably a gurgle. It was intimate, brutal, and personal, exactly how Vikings liked their violence. Archaeological finds show these blades worn smooth from constant use. They weren't ceremonial. They were working tools for a working warrior. And when diplomacy failed, the Seax spoke louder than words. The spear. While Hollywood loves Viking swords, real Norse warriors knew the truth. Spears were the backbone of their warfare. Cheap to make, versatile in use, and deadly in formation, the spear was every warrior's trusted companion. But these weren't simple pointed sticks. They were engineered killing machines that formed the core of Viking tactical success. Viking spearheads came in dozens of shapes, each designed for a specific type of death. Leaf-shaped blades for deep thrusts, angular points for punching through mail, winged designs to prevent over-penetration. Some had barbs that made pulling them out impossible. Your enemy either kept fighting with a spear shaft sticking out of his chest, or he pulled it out and bled to death in seconds. The shafts were 8 to 10 feet of seasoned ash wood, flexible enough to absorb impact, strong enough to punch through shields. A formation of Vikings with spears created an impenetrable wall of death. Combined with shields, terrain advantages, and naval mobility, spear-armed Vikings could dominate any battlefield. Odin himself carried a spear called Gungnir, which never missed its target. Viking warriors took that mythology seriously. They carved runes into their spearheads, blessed them with blood, and treated them like sacred objects. Because in their minds, every thrust carried the All-Father's blessing. The thrown axe. Picture this. You're facing a Viking shield wall, feeling pretty confident behind your own defenses when suddenly the air fills with spinning axes. Welcome to thrown axe warfare, where your shield becomes your coffin lid. These throwing axes weren't random chunks of metal. They were precisely balanced, with heavy iron heads and carefully shaped handles. A skilled warrior could bury one in your skull from 30 yards away. The spinning motion gave them incredible penetrating power. They could punch through wooden shields like they were made of paper. But here's the genius part. Even if the axe didn't kill you, it was still doing its job. An axe embedded in your shield made it too heavy and awkward to use. You either dropped your protection or fought one-handed with a hunk of iron throwing off your balance. Either way, you were dead when the real charge came. Vikings often threw them in volleys, dozens of spinning death dealers filling the sky before the shield wall crashed home. It was psychological warfare at its finest. How do you maintain formation when axes are literally falling from heaven? The Langach. Not every Viking could afford a sword, but every Viking could afford to kill you. Enter the Langach, a knife so big it might as well have been a sword, but priced for the common warrior. At 2 to 3 feet long, this beast split the difference between Seax and sword, giving you most of the killing power at half the cost. The blade was single-edged but wickedly sharp, designed for chopping and slashing rather than delicate thrusting. It couldn't match a sword's reach, but it made up for it in sheer brutality. One good swing could take off a hand, split a skull, or open someone from belly to breastbone. What made the Langach special was its versatility. Too big to be just a knife, too crude to be a gentleman's sword, it occupied a perfect middle ground for the working-class Viking. Farmers, fishermen, and craftsmen all carried them. When the call to raid came, they were already armed and ready. The psychological impact was real too. It was the weapon of someone with nothing to lose and everything to prove, and those were exactly the kind of Vikings you didn't want to meet in a dark alley or a bright battlefield. The sword. While common Vikings carried Seaxes and spears, the wealthy elite wielded swords, the ultimate symbol of status and skill. These weren't just weapons. They were heirlooms, works of art, and extensions of a warrior's soul. Pattern-welded blades with names like Graham and Legbiter became legendary in their own right. A Viking sword was typically around 3 feet long, double-edged, and perfectly balanced for one-handed fighting alongside a shield. The best blades were imported from the Rhineland or forged by master smiths who knew secrets passed down through generations. They could slice through mail, parry spear thrusts, and deliver killing cuts with elegant precision. But owning a sword meant more than just having a weapon. It meant having the wealth to afford one and the skill to use it properly. Sword fighting required years of training, unlike the more intuitive axe or spear. A man with a sword was announcing to the world that he was both rich and deadly. The psychological impact was immediate. When a Viking drew his named blade, enemies knew they were facing someone who could afford the best and had lived long enough to master it. These weapons were so valued that they were often buried with their owners, ensuring the warrior would be properly armed in the afterlife. The Atgegear. The sagas speak of a weapon so fearsome that only heroes could wield it properly. The Atgegear, described as a combination of spear and halberd with a long central point flanked by cutting edges, it appears in later Icelandic stories as the weapon of legendary fighters. Whether the Atgegear existed exactly as described in the sagas is debated by historians, since these stories were written centuries after the Viking Age ended. But the weapon represents something real. The Viking fascination with versatile polearms that could stab, slash, hook, and dismember all in one fluid motion. According to the sagas, a skilled Atgegear wielder could fight multiple opponents at once, keeping them at spear range while still delivering axe-like wounds. The weapon demanded incredible skill, but in the right hands it was supposedly unstoppable. Heroes like Gunnar of Hlíðarendi made the Atgegear famous through their legendary exploits. Real or mythologized, the Atgegear captures the Viking ideal of the perfect warrior's weapon, one that could adapt to any situation and turn a single fighter into an army of one. The bearded axe. The bearded axe looked like someone had stretched a regular axe blade downward, creating a distinctive beard of steel that extended below the socket. This wasn't just for show, that extra metal was a game changer in combat. The extended lower edge could hook around shields, pull them down, and expose enemies for follow-up strikes. It could also trap weapons, twist them away, or bind them up completely. But the real genius was in the cutting power. The curved beard concentrated all the force of the swing into a smaller impact area, letting it bite deeper into whatever it hit. Vikings used the bearded axe one-handed with a shield, making it perfect for the classic Norse fighting style. You could block with the shield, hook with the beard, and chop with the main blade all in one flowing combination. Enemy weapons, shields, and limbs all became targets for the hungry steel. The weapon was so effective that it spread beyond Scandinavia, adopted by warriors across Europe who recognized its brutal efficiency. But Vikings perfected it first, turning a simple tool into an instrument of tactical superiority. The SCARIMASAX. When everything else failed, your shield was split, your spear broken, your axe lost, you reached for the SCARIMASAX. This large fighting knife worn by warriors across northern Europe was the ultimate backup weapon. Bigger than a Seax but smaller than a sword, it occupied a deadly middle ground. The SCARIMASAX typically measured 12 to 20 inches with a single cutting edge and a thick, sturdy spine. It was designed for close-quarters combat when formations had broken down and fighting became personal. The blade was wide enough to deliver devastating cuts but narrow enough to slip between ribs or under armor. What made the SCARIMASAX special was its reliability. Unlike complex weapons that could break or jam, this was just a chunk of sharp steel that never failed. It cut rope, split mail rings, opened throats, and served as an eating knife when the battle was over. It was the ultimate survivor's tool. Warriors often carried multiple SCARIMASAXes, one for utility, others for combat. When the shield wall collapsed and chaos reigned, these blades decided who lived and who died in the blood-soaked mud. The bow. Vikings were deadly archers. While they loved their axes and spears, they understood that sometimes the best way to kill an enemy was from far away, quietly, before he even knew you were there. Viking bows were long self-bows made from yew or ash, standing nearly as tall as a man. They weren't the composite recurved bows of the steppes, but they could still punch arrows through mail at impressive distances. Archaeological finds like the Hedeby bow show these were serious weapons, not hunting toys. The arrows themselves were works of lethal art. Bodkin points for armor, broadheads for flesh, barbed heads for maximum damage. A skilled archer could drop a horse at 50 yards or put a shaft through a man's eye from across a battlefield. During raids, archers provided crucial covering fire for the main assault, picking off defenders from the longships before the warriors even landed. They targeted leaders, horses, and anyone trying to organize the defense. By the time the shield wall hit shore, the enemy was already in chaos. The psychological impact was pure terror. Imagine trying to defend your village while invisible death falls from the sky. You couldn't charge what you couldn't see, couldn't fight what you couldn't reach. All you could do was hide and hope the next arrow had someone else's name on it. And there you have it, 10 weapons that turned Scandinavian farmers into the scourge of Europe. From the skull-splitting Dane axe to the silent death of the bow, each tool was designed for one purpose: turning living enemies into dead ones, as efficiently and brutally as possible. These weren't just weapons, they were statements of intent. When a Viking picked up his axe, he wasn't just choosing a tool, he was choosing a way of life. Victory through violence, wealth through warfare, and glory that would echo in the halls of poets and storytellers. The Vikings raided for practical reasons: silver, slaves, political advantage, and trade disruption. But they fought with a ferocity that made their enemies believe they were facing demons from the frozen north. So which of these brutal tools would you least want to face? The crushing impact of a bearded axe? The flying death of a thrown axe? Or maybe the silent arrow that you never see coming? Drop your choice in the comments below. And if you want more bone-crushing history like this, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching.